Hi, guys. Happy 2025, and welcome back to the In Her Own World podcast hosted by me, Shannon. I am so excited to be kicking off this podcast for this year. I have so many ideas and goals and directions that I feel like this podcast could lead me, and I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy to be creating on a platform other than TikTok with the impending doom of TikTok leaving us. And yeah, thanks for sitting down with me. I love a new year, so that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, but more so under the lens of a winter funk that I know many of us are in. I was thinking about how jealous I am of Australians because their new year comes at the time it quite frankly should. I think that we should all have different new years, okay? Which would be a mess with the calendar. But what I'm saying is that it's just like, why is the new year in the dead of winter for so many of us, for us in the US and Europe at least? Because the Aussies, they are at their peak hotness, their peak motivation, and they have their new year right smack dab in the middle of that festival season, all of the things going on. I imagine an Australian New Year is probably the best thing ever because you're making these goals and you actually have the brain chemicals because of the sunshine to be able to achieve them. How beautiful. But for a lot of us, at least for me here in the northeast of the USA, I am in a winter funk like many, many, many of us are. I've really been feeling it this past week. When I tell you, it has been a mental battle to get out of bed in the morning. It's to the point that I'm a little bit worried because I've been I've been mildly very functionally depressed in the past, definitely in college. I kind of know the feeling. But I've never been a full-blown depressed in my life. Can't get out of bed depressed, and I feel grateful for that, but I've been worrying myself a little bit this past week because damn, like the thoughts I am having when I open my eyes in the morning. I'm a morning person, even in the dead of winter. Usually I'm up and at 'em, out of bed, really, really excited to get my day started. That has not been the case. That has not been the case, you guys, the past few weeks. I just had to move my phone a little bit. Sorry if the angle changed. But yeah, so we're going to talk about being in a winter funk, which I know many of us probably are right now, and the coping skills for it, the good and the bad, because when I was deep in the throes of health and wellness, I was listening to Skinny Confidential podcast and anything Dear Media. I was eating that shit up last year, the year before that. The church bells are going off. God damn it. Okay, well, we're gonna have a nice little church bell music in the back because I need to record this right now. But when I was deep into the health and wellness space, I can't help but look at it as a little bit toxic. I don't listen to the Skinny Confidential anymore. I don't listen to a lot of the health and wellness podcasts that I used to listen to anymore because there's so much bullshit in those. And I used to kind of structure this podcast that way. And I'm thinking back to an episode I made about, if you're already failing your New Year's resolutions, listen to this episode. And today actually is the second Friday in January, which means it's Quitters Day. It's like an official thing, apparently, where this is the day where most people stop their New Year's resolutions and don't move forward with. My mind immediately goes to everyone doing dry Jan because it makes sense. It's the weekend, it's the second weekend, and a lot of people are probably like, you know what, fuck it, I'm getting a cocktail with my friends. And that's fine, and that's really, really fair. I'm not doing dry anything this year. I did 75 hard last year because, again, I was still deep in this health and wellness mentality. And there's a reason why I'm not doing it this year. It's not just because I don't feel like it, but it's because I actually think that, at least for me, it's the whole like mega health and wellness space is bullshit. I don't know if that's too it's harsh, but sometimes I see other people who are deep in it and I see so much of my past self and I'm just grateful honestly not to be there, and I am never going to snub taking care of yourself and taking control of your health and your life and everything like that. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. Once you reach a certain threshold and a certain baseline of taking care of yourself, there's a point where it's just too much, and I do think it actually detracts from your overall well-being. Like, it kind of begs the question, is wellness to some level, to some degree, making us unwell, would be my journal prompt for everyone listening to this. As someone who is young and healthy, and I move every single day, I work out a lot, I eat my vegetables, I allow myself my sweet treat now and then. I allow myself my long night out with my friends now and again. That results in blurry memories. I think I have struck a good balance and a good threshold of health in my life, and also balancing that with happiness and things that might not be put into the category of health, but that bring me joy. And I would argue for your mind, for your mental health, that is just as important as eating kale or going to the gym, right? So I guess to some level, this episode is a critique on the health and wellness space, and I think it's a very important conversation. It's a conversation that's already happening, and I don't know, I'm not anti health and wellness, but I am anti trying to have a 100% healthy lifestyle when, in my opinion, 80/20 just fine, just right. All of that to say, I'm not doing dry Jan. I'm heading to New York next weekend to see all of my friends for the first time in a while. So knowing that was coming up, I was like, you know what? Dry Jan's out the window for me. Maybe we'll try February. I don't know. I've challenged myself before. I've done it before. I know I'm very capable of it. But honestly, after the end of my 75 hard last year, I ended it and didn't feel much. I didn't feel that even proud of myself. I don't know why. I think it was taking enough fun away from my life and not making me miserable at all, but it took enough away that I actually felt like it wasn't that worth it for me personally. And that's all I'll say about that. And the sick and twisted thing is about the new year coming in the dead of winter. This is kind of where my point started, is that it is so hard to motivate in the winter. And one thing is that relying just on motivation isn't going to get you far. Motivation gets you about 2 weeks, which is probably why today, the second Friday in January, is in fact Quitter's Day, because motivation only gets you so far. The thing that gets you really far in achieving goals is your habits, right? Are your habits. So I have been definitely in the throes of my winter funk the past few weeks, is what it is. It happens every year. And the reason why I'm not spiraling deep into it as I have in the past is because I did start taking my health more seriously about 5 or so years ago now, I would say. And because I have such strong, healthy habits at my baseline minimum, like movement every day, taking care of my mind to some level, whether that's just a deep breath, a full meditation, a journaling session, something like that is happening for me every single day. Despite the winter funk, I'm doing okay because of my habits, but my environment is not supporting that. It is bitterly cold outside. And again, this is why I'm jealous of the Aussies, because if motivation is going to extend beyond a couple weeks, that's definitely going to be in the summertime when the sun is shining, when you are your hottest, tannest, happiest, vitamin D filled self. And that's not the case for most of us here in the US. So I think that's something important to think about, and to just have a little bit of grace with yourself, because for most of us, our new year is not coming at a time when we really should be making goals. It's coming at a time when we should be hibernating, and we should be taking the time for introspection. So for me, my new year has, as much as I love the new year and I love goal setting and I love all of that stuff, the new year this year, and I think for all future years, is going to be less about, okay, I'm going to work out this way and eat this way and do this, that, and the other thing. And the new year is becoming more about, how can I enrich my mind? How can I enrich my hobbies and create more? How can I be more introspective? And usually the answers to that are things like reading and journaling, meditating, creating. So doing things like this podcast, working on whatever side hustle, if you're trying to start a business, if you want to start creating content. I do think now is the time to implement these habits so that when we do get to the summertime and we are our beautiful vitamin D filled selves, it's like you already have this kind of baseline built for yourself to really skyrocket that. I think the issue is that, and one of the things I think that causes a winter funk is there's all this shame around whatever you fucked up the last year, and that you now feel like you have to fix. You feel like you have to, you didn't work out last year, so you feel like you need this big workout routine. I think the source of a winter funk isn't even necessarily just the weather. It's the shame around New Year's resolutions and not achieving things and having to look at the things that you fucked up last year, you know? And I think it's a necessary phase, but it's something that needs to be addressed and that I don't think people talk about enough, is that there's this kind of guilt and shame that comes with the new year that I think can feed into a winter funk. But I don't think it should be there. And I think that if you just reframe, instead of feeling like you have to start the year with that skyrocket I'm talking about, start the year with just building your baseline. So, yes, journal on it. Get clear on what you want this year to look like, but know that if it's freezing cold where you are and it's not that sunny, most days it's really sunny here today, as you can tell, which is beautiful. And it's feeding my soul. But you have to have grace with yourself. And if your environment is not feeding that, it's okay. And you can just focus on what are the small habits, what are the day-to-day habits that are going to get you to the thing you want to achieve. So maybe you want to read 35 books this year. I'm projecting because that is my goal this year. Having a 10-page a day habit rather than feeling like you need to finish 2 books a week off the bat, that will get you into such a great space. And then maybe by the summertime, when you have a little bit more free time, you're vacationing, that's when you're going to read 2 books in a week. It's like sometimes I think it's great to hit the ground running, but also that can only get you so far. Motivation will only get you so far. What matters and what will build long-term success are just the small habits in your day to day. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on the link, I think, between New Year's resolutions and getting into a winter funk. Because I think it's important to look at why you're in a winter funk. It's almost a placebo at this point, where it just, for me at least, it's like January hit and I was like, okay, it's time to be sad. It's time to have a hard time getting out of bed. And when I actually step back and look at, okay, but is there anything going wrong in my life? What is the reason that I actually am feeling this way? Because you might find that you actually don't have much of a reason to be in a winter funk besides the cold, dreary weather outside. But also I think it's important to highlight the reasons why you might not be doing so well right now. We're all always going through seasons of life. And so personally, when I stepped back and reflected on this, the first thing I thought of was how sometimes New Year's resolutions can come with shame around what you didn't achieve last year or what you fucked up last year. And I think that's number one to realize. And I think once you realize that, you can kind of release a bit of the shame around it and hopefully come a bit out of that funk if you're someone like me who does like New Year's resolutions and takes that kind of a thing seriously. You don't have to feel so bad about the things that you fucked up last year. You just have to move forward and do your absolute best and figure out what the day-to-day habits are that are going to combat that and fix that or create that new dream, that new goal that you have. But also, like for me personally, I am living back at home with my parents before I moved to Barcelona in April. So I'm here in my hometown for the winter and it's fucking weird, okay? It's not my norm. The past few years I have been in New York and I have realized I knew leaving my friends was going to be hard for me, but I did not realize how much of a crutch they were in my winters in the past. Like, I have realized that friends and connection and having a social life is a key for me to not spiraling into a winter funk, because I think my worst winter funk I had was like my first year in New York, and for whatever reason I was just self-isolating. I did not want to see people. I did not want to talk to people. It was hard for me to get myself out of the house on the weekends. I ended up struggling in some of my friendships that year. And I really do believe that for everyone, because I do consider myself an introvert, that having a social life and staying connected with people in the winter is a huge answer to getting out of a winter funk, because I have felt so nostalgic for the winter nights out in New York where I have a little liquid blanket, I pregame at a friend's apartment, and then we're standing outside of the bar waiting to talk to the bouncer to get in freezing our little butts off on the corner of a New York City street. And as miserable as it has been in those moments, I never anticipated that I would feel this nostalgic for that moment. I'm visiting next weekend and I cannot wait to be doing that with my friends. I have a dinner booked for us. We're going to go to one of my favorite little dancey bars called Joy Face after dinner, and I'm fucking excited, you guys. Yeah, a big source of my winter funk is missing my friends. So when I realized that and reflected on that, I realized I needed to plan this weekend in New York and manufacture this moment that I'm nostalgic for. I think the thing about winter is that, or the thing about summer is that you kind of just, especially if you're traveling, getting into things, going out with your friends, you just naturally fall into shenanigans. You don't really have to try that hard because people are out, people are talking, people are being social. But the thing about the winter is that I think you have to manufacture things more than you do in the summertime. And I think a lot of people don't realize that or maybe aren't willing to do that. But you do. You have to manufacture your happiness to some level in the winter, or at least I do. And so for me, a big part of that, is this on? Yes. Okay. For me, a big part of that was manufacturing. Maybe that's not the best word because it sounds kind of fake, but this moment I'm nostalgic for, which is going out on a winter night out in New York City with all of my friends. And I corralled them all. I made this huge 12-person dinner reservation. I'm like, I want every single face I love there, okay? And now I have something to look forward to next weekend. And I'm telling you, once I made that reservation last week, that immediately kind of pulled me a little bit out of this big winter funk that I've been in. So yeah, manufacture your happiness, manufacture your moments in the wintertime if you're like me and you get into funks like this. Just reflect on, those moments where it came so naturally for you to pop up out of bed with this spirit in you, probably in the warmer months. What were you doing? What were the activities that were planned? And make that happen. There's no real reason why that can't happen in the wintertime too. And do not underestimate the connection with your community and the connection with your friends and how much that will help you. I know it's the natural inclination to be a hermit in the winter and to not get out of your warm, cozy bed, but I have never regretted forcing myself to do that, especially in the winter. Obviously, listen to yourself, listen to your body and what you need, but there will always be time for resting. Your friends might not always live in the same city as you. You will always find time for rest and relaxation, but you cannot always get these moments with your friends in your city back. And that's something I'm really realizing now that I have moved out of New York and I am moving to Spain. I think I think that first winter where I was isolating a bit, it's kind of like I felt like my friends would be there forever and that I would be there forever. And things change, and that's not the case. And I'm making my exit from the country, literally. So things change. I know it feels like your friends will always be there. They may not be. Go hang out with them, okay? Same thing with your family, your grandparents, your community, okay? I think that is such a key to getting out of your winter funk. Another thing that came out of my why am I in a winter funk reflection is I feel like I'm in a waiting room. Literally, I feel like I'm standing in an elevator or something with that elevator music playing, just with my arms crossed, tapping my foot. Like, when am I going to get to my floor? When are these doors going to open? When is someone going to call my name to come into the room, you know? And the reason I feel that way is because I am so excited to move to Barcelona in April that it's all I talk about, it's all I think about. I live, eat, breathe this move. But the thing that is unfortunately doing, and I think how that is as much as I'm so grateful I have something to be so excited about, it's making me be less present in this moment and in this time that I have to live with my parents again and to be in their company, you know? Um, Even last night, I was sitting on the couch watching the Penn State game with them, and I was scrolling on Pinterest, saving things to my Spain board. And they were trying to talk to me, and I was kind of half responding. And, I was like, I shouldn't be doing this. It's so exciting that I'm going to Spain. It's so, again, it's kind of that I'm living, eating, breathing this move. It's kind of all I talk about, but that doesn't mean that I am not abundant here in the US, living at home. Like, look at this room, this cozy looking room behind me. Like, I'm so grateful to have this and to have parents that support me and who I can live with for a few months so that I can more comfortably go to Spain, and who support me in every single way possible. And so I realized part of my funk was definitely coming from just living in this future that literally doesn't exist yet. And as great as it is that I have such a positive mentality about moving, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be enjoying myself here and now. And I also think that, attachment to outcomes and things is kind of the root of a lot of suffering. So I also want to be careful about not getting too attached to this whole move going perfectly. There's going to be bumps in the road. It's probably going to be really hard at times being an expat in Spain. And it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. So I don't want to be attached to this perfect rainbows and butterflies outcome that I have right now. I don't think it's a bad thing to be that way, but I don't want to get overly attached. And the more I take myself out of this present moment, just riding on the fact that everything's going to be so amazing and beautiful in Spain, which I think to some extent it will be, it's just it doesn't make sense to not enjoy this moment because I'm looking so forward to enjoying future moments. It's silly. So if you are in a similar situation, maybe you're moving to a new city, maybe you're, moving in with your significant other or something like that. Like, there's just this big thing coming up in X amount of months. Maybe it's just a vacation, a trip that you're really looking forward to. Remember that wherever you go, there you are. So it's important to be present in the moment now and work on being your best self now so that you can be your best self then in that moment as well. Because if you don't work to make any changes now, when you magically make that move or go on that vacation, you won't just like magically become the person that you think you're going to be there. You have to work on it now, right? So let's talk about coping mechanisms for being in a winter funk, the good and the bad. I think something that I used to skim over when I was like super deep into the health and wellness podcasting and talking about that thing is I would be like, you just need to meditate and journal and go on walks. And I do believe that. And I do those things. And I do think you should do those things as coping mechanisms. But I wasn't addressing the fact that there are negative coping mechanisms that we need to talk about. One of those being, I'm going to call it just escapism, okay? And I think there's three main forms of escapism that we all fall into in the winter, two of which are bad coping skills, one of which is what I would recommend replacing these two with, okay? Because the thing about if you're just not happy in your environment, it's freezing cold outside, you don't want to leave your bed, I think that we have the tendency to retreat into escapism, into other people, into other stories. And we do that through scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is and living in other people's lives that seem better than ours, or binge watching TV shows. Since being home with my parents, I am shocked, you guys, by how much TV they watch, because I'm actually randomly not a big TV watcher these days, to the point that I almost think I need to sit down and take a chill pill and go binge a show or something, because I don't think it's a bad thing to do that every so often. But it is a form of just like escaping into someone else's story, whether it's a real person on TikTok or a fictional character in a show. And it makes a lot of sense that we do a lot more of that in these kind of more hermity months, because we're inside more, we're outside less, it's cold, you're in your winter funk, and you want to escape into something else. It all makes sense. But I think that the best way to feed this part of your brain and to feed this natural inclination to escape into someone else is to read instead of watching the shows or scrolling on TikTok. And this is a message for myself. I've been scrolling a lot more than usual the past few weeks, and it's not good. It doesn't leave me feeling good. It makes me spend money when my biggest goal is not spending money, because people are pushing so many products on TikTok these days, on TikTok Shop. So yeah, it really takes away from all of my goals for the new year because it's not only taking creative time away from me to do things like this, it's taking my money as well, which I am really, really trying to work on my relationship with shopping and money. It's one of my biggest things for this year. So none of it's good for me. And I don't think watching shows is inherently bad. There's a lot of enriching shows out there, and I think hearing stories and connecting to characters, is very can be fulfilling to some extent. But when you do that through reading and through a book rather than something electronic, there's just this sense of satisfaction that comes from finishing a story and getting attached to book characters that doesn't hit the same as a TV show does. And I feel like a very common New Year's goal as well is to read more. So you're also kind of hitting two birds with one stone. You're hitting that little button in your brain that says like escapism, go into someone else's story. I don't want to be here in my environment right now, but you're also contributing to what is likely a New Year's goal for you to read more because I think that's very common. So I'm going to challenge all of us and myself every time I want to pick up my phone to scroll or maybe start a new show this week or something like that. Pick up a book. Just pick up a book, any book, okay? And I think where people go wrong, where I go wrong, is in the past I've done this, is thinking that I need to be reading something intellectual, some kind of classic or a modern classic or something that all the thought daughters on TikTok are recommending, Eve Babbitt, Virginia Woolf, all of these incredible authors, okay? And I do love those books. And I like this also comes back to habits because I'm in such a habit of reading. It doesn't really matter what book I pick up, I'm going to finish it in a timely manner these days because I have formed such a habit of reading daily. But if you're trying to build that habit or you just want to get through something quickly and you want something that's going to make you giggle and kick your feet, there is zero shame around whatever book you choose to pick up. If you want to go reread Hunger Games, go reread Hunger Games. If you want to read Harry Potter, read Harry Potter. If you want to read a slutty romance novel that's made for 13-year-olds and you're 25, like me, go for it. If that's what's going to get you to pick up a book and escape into someone else's story that is not a talking head on TikTok and that is not a TV show on Netflix, claps to you, seriously. It really does not matter what you pick up, and I think that's where people go wrong, especially if you don't have the habit formed of reading every day. Don't go picking up classic novels. I'm sorry, you're very unlikely to finish them. Or even if you do get yourself to finish it, you're not going to be leaved with this inspired sense to go pick up another one. Okay, you're going to be like, oh, I'm glad that one's over. Okay, you do not need to be reading like Of Mice and Men out here. I'm not saying it's a bad book. I'm saying it's probably a bad book for a new reader to pick up. Okay. So, an example of this, I have been on like quite the thought daughter book kick, but I kind of, after my last one, was like, that left me feeling a little bit like I'm in a bit of a reading funk, didn't love it. So, you know what I picked up? I picked up something that is made for teenagers. This is the Boys of Tommen series. It came highly recommended from the Book Talk girlies, and this book has me giggling and kicking my feet. It's a bit too slow of a burn for me. I will say I'm more than halfway through and they haven't even kissed yet. I'm getting a little bit annoyed. But I love it and it's especially helpful. Well, also I have to say, please work on your coverings. Whoever, Chloe Walsh, if you're in charge of this, we need a new cover because this is giving like galaxy print. I don't get it. I also have yet to understand how this relates to the story at all. But the main girl in this book who is falling in love and who a boy is falling right back in love with her. Her name is Shannon, and it's set in Ireland. Anything that's set in a country that I know I'm probably going to visit in the next year makes me so excited. I'm probably going to be going to Ireland in September, so this is just fun all around. She also introduces herself as Shannon, comma, like the river. I'm going to start introducing myself like that. That should be my intro to these podcasts. It genuinely though has been a source of joy and happiness in my day-to-day. I've actually kind of been rationing the book a little bit because I don't want to finish the story too fast, but it's a huge series. I think one of the books in the series is like this thick. I don't know if I'm gonna get there. I don't know, guys. But that's just a tip for you guys. I don't think it's bad necessarily to scroll. I don't think it's bad necessarily to binge a TV show. but think about replacing it with just address the fact that you're kind of trying to escape into a different story, and think about replacing that with a book instead, because it will give you a similar, if not more satisfying feeling, because you're accomplishing something, you're expanding your vocabulary. The more I read, the better I speak. I have noticed it in these podcasts I'm recording, how much more eloquently I speak when I am consistently reading, and I'm not even trying that hard to necessarily gain vocabulary out of it. It just comes naturally. So that's another cool thing about reading a lot. You just sound a lot smarter. And then, of course, journaling, meditating, movement, all of these things are so important. You guys know, if you watch my last episode, my biggest New Year's goal is to take the emphasis off what I look like and to put the emphasis on what I feel like, and taking care of my mental health and enriching my mind. So, reading is a big way to do that, but also journaling, and journaling in a different way than I used to. I feel like I used to pick up my journal. I've always been a consistent journaler, but I used to pick up my journal and just kind of, word vomit what's going on in my life, what I'm sad about. It was always what I was sad about, and whatever guy hurt me that month, or whatever, this, that, and the other. And I do think it's nice to have timestamps and to look back on those journal entries and be like, oh my God, I was so worried about this guy, and he ended up not even being relevant at all, or whatever. But I'm journaling in a different way, in the sense that I have better journal prompts for myself that are more, make me reflect a bit more deeply. You can go back to my last video and look at all of the journal prompts from that. And for example, I watched the movie Past Lives with my parents last week for the first time, and it really, really touched me and got me thinking a lot. And I thought to myself, I should journal on this. So I went into my journal, dated it, and put in an entry that, had some life updates, like, oh, I sat on the couch and watched this movie with my parents. So when I look back on that in a year, I'll remember that night. But then I went and reflected on past lives and what it made me think about, and why it made me emotional, and why it touched me so much. So just things, I'm just journaling in a different way than I used to. And I'm getting away from journaling just about the crush of the month, or if I'm like fighting with my mom, or fighting with a friend, or angry. I don't want my journal to be all negative, and I do want it to be a life update to some extent, so that when I do look back on it when I'm 40, I can remember things. But I also just want it to be a bit deeper, and I can write some journal prompts down below for you guys if you're interested in the same. But that is what I've realized has made journaling a real habit for me. Again, all kind of relating back to habits, is when I was trying to make journaling a habit and just journaling about what happened that day and why I was maybe sad that day, or happy, it's a little lackluster either way you play it, even if you're writing about happy things. I want to know about my psyche. When I look back on this journal in 10 years, I want to get a little snapshot of like how my brain was actually functioning. I don't know, I don't think I'm describing this very well, but I've changed the way I've journaled, and I've been journaling more just in the past month than I have probably in the past year. To be honest, I've probably written the same word count in the past month that I have in the past year, because when I allow myself to go on those kind of spirals and just word vomit a little about something a little bit deeper than just my day to day, it goes and it goes and it goes and it goes. So that is something that I have been filling my time with. And again, it helps me with my winter funk, because I usually reach conclusions as I journal about just what's going on in my life and what's going on in my head. And that is never not helpful. And I also just have a little sense of, confidence that comes from writing a journal entry, because it's something that's not scrolling on TikTok, to be honest. And that always feels good as a Gen Z person. And then the last thing to take care of your mind, we've heard it before, we'll keep hearing it, but it is proven to work, and that's meditating. Something that has helped me with making meditation more of a habit is not feeling like I always need to do a 12 or 15 or 20-minute meditation. I have just been allowing myself to wake up and do a 5-minute meditation. I sit up in bed, I pull out my iPad, and I pull up, if I feel like doing a 15-minute one, I will. But like I said, this whole week I've just had issue. I've had trouble getting myself out of bed and getting myself to do the things that normally come quite easily to me, and that's just my winter funk, I think. And if the option is not meditating at all because I can't fathom doing it for 12 minutes for some reason, but I can fathom doing it for 5 minutes, I want to do it for 5 minutes rather than not at all. And I can kind of check that checkbox off. And I still do my best in that 5 minutes to really get into it and breathe and clear my mind and give myself that peace and quiet in my mind to start my day. So that's another thing, kind of similar to the book thing, is that I think people hit the ground running a little bit too fast. You just like you don't have to read the intellectual novels that your professor in college would have assigned you, you also don't have to meditate for 30 minutes using Joe Dispenza, who is just so, I think his work is incredible, but he's so out there, that you can just do the 5 minute girly pop meditation. I love Lavender. I'll link below the 5 minute one that I do. Just the quick 5 minute, easy, like I said, girly pop meditation, that is just fine. And if you can build that habit, it will only give way to like one day, 5 years from now, you wake up and you are just choosing to do the 30-minute Joe Dispenza meditation instead, because it is such a strong habit for you to do the 5 minute one. That's how that works, you guys, okay? And I think that's something I miss. That's something a lot of people miss. And it really is about the small things. And then you will wake up one day a few years from now and realize you're doing the big version of it. Okay, I think I'm going to end this podcast there. We've been talking for a good 45 minutes and I am officially late to logging in for work. Thank you so much for being here with me and listening to this podcast. I appreciate you so much. Again, I'm so excited for where I can take this podcast this year, especially with my move coming in April. There's going to be so much content that comes along with that. And I'll also be posting just fun kind of OG YouTube things because I have always been a YouTube girl. So expect favorites videos, what's in my bag, haul videos, just the like makeup favorites, makeup routines, especially with TikTok leaving us most likely. I really want to take this channel and make it a safe space for something that 15-year-old me would have loved. That was the content that I ate up, but for maybe a bit of an older crew. So that's what you can expect from this channel this year, and vlogs of my travels, of course, as well, and reflections on it and everything like that. But again, thanks for spending this time with me. I hope that this helps your winter funk to some degree. And we will get through this together, ladies, okay? We will get through this, and then summer will come, and we will wonder why we were ever sad in the winter, okay? I love you so much. Have a great weekend.